Hello and welcome to the Undercut podcast. I'm your host this evening, Jesse Billington, and we're back to preview the 19th round of the 2025 Formula One season, the American Grand Prix. To do this, I'm joined once again by my co-host, Mr. Thiemo Albus Daly. How are you?
19th round of the season, Mr. Whittington. It's flying, but no, it's not. It's taking forever to get through this championship, isn't it? But apart from that, I'm all good, thank you. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I don't think it's taking forever to get through it, nor do I think it's flying. I think it's going at a good, steady rate. And I'm enjoying that we're sort of getting into a point where it's a bit more sort of gently spread out. It's not the same sort of smash and bash and blow through them three at a time sort of opener to the year we had. It's a bit more.
The summer is always the worst. Once you're through the summer and kind of after the summer break, post Monza, it gets manageable.
Yeah, we're back at that point in time, so it's good there. It's also a great time if you enjoy following ongoing legal battles, but we're not really going to touch on that because we're going to wait for the entire thing to fully happen before we start picking apart all manner of problems that are kicking off for Zach Brown when it comes to the courts and general problems of promising people seats and never giving them to them. But anyway, speaking of seats that don't really exist, we'll kick off with the news and Porsche pulling out of WEC for 2026. They'll still run in IMSA's GTP class, but that's it. They state that ongoing market troubles are the cause for this shift, and it's a shame, really, as the season is going from strength to strength, or the series rather is going from strength to strength at the moment. And well,
Both.
McLaren's arrival next season will be interesting. Don't know who's going to be
For
in.
multiple reasons, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's going to be some interest in those seats. But yeah, it's a shame to see Porsche pulling out. And obviously, importantly, you have to be running in, I think it's World Endurance and European Series to be eligible to run at Le Mans. So they won't actually just be able to turn up and run at Le Mans ad hoc. You have to have your chassis running in that series for it to be Le Mans eligible.
Yeah, I echo you there, and that it's a shame, like you said, but I think importantly, while Porsche is quite crucial and quite a staple for motorsport generally, the series is still very strong with Hamilton. So it's not it's a dent, but it's not catastrophic, which is good. And hopefully things can stabilize a bit so the push and anyone else can sign up to work in 2027. Um, yeah, exciting slash strange times in the world as ever. So once again, having multiple reverberations, which seems to be a little bit of the theme throughout this new whole news segment, because it feels like the news we've got is just a bit random in places, and it's yet to be determined how much of it's good and how much of it's bad. It's all just very, ooh, I wasn't expecting that. Much like some of these Formula 3 transfer announcements we'll get to in a minute.
Yeah, the Porsche thing, I think there's also a lot to be said for potentially sort of exploration of Formula One, Formula E as well. Also, just sort of the general shift in their road car market as well that's been not necessarily as strong as they maybe anticipated. Problems with getting new models sort of introduced. There's a lot of different hurdles that I think Porsche have run into and have had to sort of tighten their belt in a few places. And they've been doing all right when it comes to like games and stuff. So it's fair enough. They've sort of picked what they've perceived to at least be the stronger of their entries. You hinted there at Formula 3, and there is Formula 3 news. Fionn McLaughlin completes the high-tech TGR team for next season, while, and I'm going to butcher some names here, Maciej Gladic will race for ART alongside Kanato Lay. James Wharton and Louis Sharp complete Prema's lineup, interesting enough, and Pedro Claro completes the Road and Motorsport lineup, which is a team that Abby Pulling is racing in GB3 for, and said they had been considering her for a Formula 3 spot in 2026, but that team is already full. So, questions there, although I think I can immediately answer the question of why, because, well, as usual, money.
Possibly that, which is also quite frustrating for a number of reasons, because I was in a round table earlier this year with a bunch of the Formula 3 team principals, and as is my broken record way, I was asking, well, next year going to be the year for any of you? You're going to stick one of these female drivers in one of your teams, give them a shot, as has been sort of the whole point of much of the last few years. And Roden was the only team that was really kind of keen on the idea. You had sort of the holding of party lines from everyone else and going, I like the idea in theory and we'll definitely consider and all that kind of nonsense where he's like, yeah, you could say no and get on with it and stop wasting your time. Or you do what Roden does and go, we are considering it. she's in our program. We've got Ella Lloyd, da 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 da, da, and she's been doing well this year. And I was having a look back through drivers who've been promoted up into Formula Three from Junior Series and over into Indy Next as well, as that's kind of a rough equivalent. And going, well, you've had drivers be promoted from lower down in overall standings into these seats before. So in theory, even if Abby doesn't get into the top 10 by the end of the season, that shouldn't count against her. And yet, we have this problem here. And it's slightly unfair, but not too unfair for me to pick on the drivers that team has now chosen because I want to see what's so good about these drivers that Abby never stood a chance. If we overlook your obvious point of it might be the money.
Yeah, there's obviously going to be the question about talent. If these drivers are going to have to prove themselves against what, to us at least, is a very known quantity in Abby Pulling. We know that she is a brilliantly capable racing driver. The real question, I think obviously the talent is there to have got to a certain point, but I think it's not a case of whether or not Abby Pulling have the money. I think it's simply a case of other drivers are just going to have more. And I think this is very much the case. Abby Pulling has built up a great GB3 campaign. She's obviously got money off the back of winning F1 Academy. She's got a lot of support and a lot of money behind her. I think at the moment there just still isn't the money to it, which suggests that F1 Academy either needs to step up its funding. The other race teams need to look at enhancing their sort of driver support campaigns. You said that Abby is part of
Particularly how they develop their talent,
yeah.
it's kind of if she's in your stable, if Ella's in your stable, then what are you doing? Where does Abby go next year? Because that's not immediately obvious. And if money is an issue, you're not going to suddenly have more of it when you've been struggling so much. It's you don't have a money tree in the back garden. And I was looking at the drivers that they have chosen just to see, like, okay, if we compared them to Abby, as a kind of like, if we, I know that's a money factor, but you look on the talent factor, and like maybe there's a justification there at least that I can understand why they were chosen. You look at Pedro; he last won a championship in Brazilian F4 back in 2022. It's P4 in Frecker at the moment, which like fine, but yeah. Christian Ho, he scored 17 points this year in Formula 3, so he's already got a season under his belt, but the 17 points were good enough for P22 overall. So, and then Brando Badaway scored 13 points this year. He was in F3 as well in P25. He's the weakest link there, and I made this argument either here or somewhere else recently that a bunch of drivers that have been in Formula 3 this year for like one-off appearances, the difference they made was pretty much nil. You look at Trident in particular as a team where they shuffled through a bunch of drivers and none of them really scored any points. And I was thinking, why do you not bring in someone like Marta Garcia or Abby Pulling for a one-off round here or there, like we've seen with Freddie Slater in Bahrain earlier in the year, for example, and to kind of make this decision before her season's even finished yet doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence, and again just feels like you've said the right things, and all you needed to do was at least explain why, come out and say why, because you know these questions are going to get asked. So why even you not managed the situation a bit better, I feel, in my opinion.
Yeah, Ho, I can understand a bit more. Sort of had a bit of a turnaround in form, just trying to find where he got to on my
And he
list.
said a championship last year, Eurocup 3, so I can understand, I
Also,
can understand all of them, but at the
yeah,
same time, I'm thinking none of them have stood out so much that I'm like, oh, well, obviously you'd have to go for X driver.
Ho, I think could definitely deserve do with another season because running with Dam's not the greatest outfit for this year's sort of Formula 3 season. They had a lot of teething issues and just generally a lot of setup problems. So I think giving him another season, fair enough. Putting him with Rodin, a slightly more competitive outfit, interesting to see what he does. But yeah, I'm just uninspired by what Formula 3 is doing at the moment. And it does seem to continue to suggest sort of that it is just a case of who comes to the table with the most dollar. And it's not any better in Formula 2. You remember a few weeks ago, we waved goodbye to, I think it was Max Esterson, and he then
Yes.
went on to race at Petit Le Mans. And let's see if I can just find him on Twitter because he put out a very interesting statement, and I don't think it's been taken down either. Bum, 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 bum. But lots of positive stuff about racing at Petit Le Mans. Looking forward to all of his bits and pieces there. That was it. It was a reply that he replied to someone else's tweet with, which was really interesting. Here we go. So someone reposted Max Esterson's tweet saying the kid did a great job, quite shocking if you compare it to the F2 campaign. To which Max Esterson replied, "Thank you. The disparity between cars and engines in Formula 2 affects performance more than most people probably know, why I no longer wanted to do it. And it has long been a debating point in Formula 2 about the disparity in cars, engines, chassis, setups, who gets what. There are notably favourite teams to be in when it comes to Formula 2 and teams that are, say, less well supported by the organisers. I think,
Animal Farm sort of equality.
yeah, Max Eston sort of blown the lid on that one. And it's very interesting because, yeah, there have been other seasons that have been sort of more obvious when there's been teams that have done well. And I think obviously with the new regulations, Formula 2 has had a chance to sort of almost shield that a bit and go, oh, these are just teams that are struggling to get used to the new car. But yeah, there's any NDAs that he may have signed before leaving Formula 2, he has blown completely wide open, which is quite funny. And I do like it because obviously Formula 2, no media training. So he's just out there tweeting when
No,
he.
because that much is very much apparent at times in Formula Two and Formula Three for that matter. It's that's a conversation for another time, possibly off air. But yeah, I think it's just still so frustrating that we get to this point in the year, and like we said a couple of episodes ago, there's so many announcements left, right, and centre for seats for next year, and there's still campaigns going for drivers that you'd think, well, what's the rush to announce all of these? Why not wait? Why not take a leaf out of COTA Wolf's book and just wait an extra 5 minutes just to make sure that you definitely have made the best decision here? And I get that money's important, but there have to be other avenues for getting it, even for Formula Two or Formula Three teams. It can't all be just on the drivers, how much cash they bring in. It's not as if other sponsors aren't available for the team as a whole. And it just I feel like if it was I'm going to sound older than I am in some ways here, but a bit like if Bernie Ecclestone was in charge or someone from his kind of era, they'd have found a wheeler dealer way to make enough deals to pull something off where it wouldn't matter and they could prioritize talent a bit, or they'd at least give it more of a go than the impression we get. And I think that's half of it, right? It's like you say, the lack of media training here for some of the drivers is telling. Fun for us to see what then slips out. But again, as an outfit, you think that's a bit of something that needs to be sorted. And then as a team, they make this announcement and they just have the party line, like I say, of we're really excited to have X and X driver, but there's never much discussion about why this particular one was chosen. And you then have to wait for an interview opportunity or something like this to try and get a soundbite. And you never get much out of them because the money factor is so important. It continues to be so frustrating on that one, and we keep going around in circles.
I don't get also why teams don't sign people with more of a sort of prospective idea. And like if you signed Abby Pulling to Rodin for Formula 3, you could easily start drumming up a lot more sponsorship if you were concerned about the finance behind that seat. You could easily go, oh yeah,
It's an emerging market.
Formula 3, she's going to be on Sky Sports and the international feed, 12 times a year. You're going to have your sponsorship on a car that's seen in
How many new fans are you
qualifying.
appealing to just because she's a woman? If we want to go really route one with it.
Yeah, there's so many options and opportunities that I think teams are still being a bit blind and blasé to, and it's annoying considering the talent we're seeing getting passed over. Speaking of talent, and certainly when it comes to different routes, Super Formula, and this is something we don't tend to talk about very often, but hear me out.
Mainly because there's too much. It's a great
There is a
series.
lot of Super Formula. Yeah,
There's just too much to cover, unfortunately.
it is a very good formula and there is a lot of exciting stuff coming out of it. However, the most exciting stuff is actually coming into Super Formula, and this is Kalle Rovanpera, and he is a Red Bull-backed rally driver, so competing in the World Rally Championships, who is heading to Japan to compete in the 2026 Super Formula Series. Footage has recently emerged of him testing an older Red Bull chassis in Austria, and he looked pretty at home in it. Very unique driving style, very low on the gears, continual throttle inputs, very rally style, but had the car underneath him looked at home. Kalle Rovanpera has won the World Rally Championship twice, 2022 and 2023, with his last rally win coming earlier this season in Finland. He's currently third this season driving for Toyota and could still turn the title around. He's the sport's youngest rally winner and youngest championship winner, best described as infuriatingly talented for a 25-year-old. On circuits, he's run in the Porsche Carrera Cup before, taking wins and podiums, as well as having run at the Dubai 24 Hours. He garnered international attention at the age of 8 when footage of him driving a rally car was uploaded to the internet, and he participated in his first official rally at just 10 years old. He's also run in Formula Drift, and with his move to Super Formula, intends to get to Formula 2 by 2027. This is someone so talented the Finnish government allowed them to take their driving test early. It also means that there's an exciting future where a former rally driver and former IndyCar driver, Colton Herta, both get mecha-chromed as they battle for an F2 title. Speaking of Herta, it's looking more and more certain that he will be joining Formula 2 for 2026. As it stands in Super
It's all
Formula,
but confirmed.
it's all but confirmed, yeah. As it stands in Super Formula, Sho Tsubo is the defending champion and leads with 95 points ahead of the podcast favourite Ayumu Iwasa on 90 points. Iwasa placed 5th last year and took the Rookie of the Year title, though I haven't checked if they had a round before I last wrote this. They might have done weekend gone, I
They
don't
had a
think.
round last weekend, but it was a rain-washed affair, and they got half points, I think, so only got about 7 laps under the safety car, so not too much happened.
Okay, no
Um,
change to when I last wrote that then.
yeah, Rovanpera is a fascinating one because we saw his announcement that he was retiring from rallying, and we're like, 25, mate. What are you gonna do? I mean, you're getting pretty good at this thing now. What are you up to? And then Super Formula of all the things, we're thinking, oh, maybe there's a Dakar in the offing, maybe there's some other off-roading in that sort of thing. But no, the single seaters, the Leah Block route, as I'm now and forever going to call it. Um, so yeah, quite fascinating to see, and a very different kind of challenge in the same way it complements, but is very different to what Colton Herta is doing. Because obviously, Colton Herta is taking somewhat of a step back to try and take a giant leap forward, whereas Rovanpera, he's just leaping. It feels like into a completely different kettle of fish, and I have no idea how it's going to go. But I'll be fascinated to see what happens. And will I be waking up extra early to watch all of the Super Formula race next year? Probably not, because I'm not that insane. But I will be keeping a closer eye on it than I have maybe been in previous years. If they do longer highlights packages than the 5 minutes on YouTube, happily. But that's kind of the injection I think something like Super Formula needs, in the same way that Fortnite going to F2 is what F2 needs, especially after this season. You need to see the potential in there being something there, especially when there's so many single-seater junior series. We'd love to watch them all, but we can't.
Mm. I
So
think,
having someone like him turn up is different.
yeah, a big surprising driver that just sort of rocks up onto the scene and starts shaking things up, I think is an exciting prospect for any series, and seeing Super Formula get that, Formula 2 likely getting that with Colt Herter as well, is going to be really interesting, especially for the series to sort of go, there are talent pools that we should be looking at. And hopefully it does sort of a bit of what we hope it might do, which is sort of shake up a few sort of sponsors, advertisers, race promoters, race organizers, sort of go, oh, this is interesting. What if we had some talent come in from sort of other pools or other genders, maybe, and just sort
Well,
of,
that's the thing, right? Because it kept Liam Lawson relevant for his seat, which ultimately worked out for him one way or the other this year. Zach O'Sullivan left F2 kind of midway through last year, and then is now treading water in Super Formula and doing an all right job.
hmm,
And you saying about other genders, Juju Noda's there. She's very young, and I'd be surprised if she's not in F1 Academy at some point, because I'm surprised she's just not more on the radar there. But again, it's just quietly going about its business, and it's yeah, it's weird because it's like, why are there not more people looking at this?
hmm. I think it's going to help sort of promote the idea that there is other routes and other ways of getting into these sports and these seats. And I think that more and more Western audiences, let's say, are quickly realizing how overlooked Super Formula is. And I think that it's going to be an important revelation when it suddenly does become a bit more mainstream. And I'd like to see it potentially as sort of a warm up race to the Japanese Grand Prix at some point. I think that'd be really
I
exciting
was
to
so
see.
surprised that that wasn't the case this year, and with F1 trying to like be bigger in all of the silly ways that I don't agree with. I'm like, but on the racing side, you don't need to bring a feeder series there. As much as we'd like to see that, you've already got one that is in the country.
Yeah.
Just put it on at the same time.
Hmm.
Not difficult.
It'd be nice to see some sort of like regional F4 races and Freca races also getting that tie in as well. I think it'd be great
Well,
again.
yeah, you think about that with the Middle East races, they've got the Saudi Championships on at the moment. If
Mm.
they just moved that around a bit, you've got the Middle East F4 is on at like the start of the year. I think you've got the Winter Series, which I think goes around Spain and maybe a little bit of Portugal. You could fiddle about with it a little bit or have a bonus exhibition race or something, these sorts of things. It's why are we solving all of these issues
I don't
when
know.
the people who are getting
Maybe
paid
we're
to do it?
maybe we're the only sensible ones. Anyway, it'd be nice to see that
Oh
sort of
dear, that's
happen.
not
But
good.
we'll move on to Formula E, and they've got another women's test coming up. And previously confirmed driver for the test was Bianca Bustamante for Cupra. And we can also now report that Abby Pulling would, or we reported at the time that Abby Pulling would likely drive for Nissan, which has now been confirmed. Also announced now are Lindsay Marie Brewer and Jess Edgar for DS Penske and Marta Garcia for Lola Yamaha. There's going to be a few more bits on F1 Academy drivers driving elsewhere as well, because I know that what's her face, the Alpine Bax driver, was in Middle East F4.
That's what she's famously known as, Nina Gagel. Yes, that's the
Yes,
one.
I couldn't remember her name off the top of my head, but
She,
I remember she was the
I
Alpine Bax
noticed that.
driver. Yeah, she won
Um,
or podiumed at Zandvoort as well, didn't she?
yeah, Zandvoort, yes, and she's currently in joint P1 in the Saudi Arabian F4 Championship after the opening round in Bahrain. She finished P2 and P3 across the weekend, which nicely jobbed there. Unfortunately, because of F1 Academy in Las Vegas, she's only going to compete in that round and the final round in Jeddah, so it's going to be tricky for her to win the title. But I like the fact that she just hit the ground running there and just double podiumed immediately and is in joint first. It's nice to see that continued development. She's not the only one from F1 Academy in that series either. Who's probably going to be able to compete more often because I think it's mainly just wildcard drivers, the other three. You got Megan Bruce, who stood in for Unostiades, I think, Ava Dobson, who was in Miami, and Esme Kosterman, who was at Zandvoort, who did pretty well. She's joining the series soon. The other two are already there in Bahrain. And it's, again, a liberal formula. I don't know where to necessarily watch it. I'll go find out and maybe find some highlights, this, that, and the other. But it's nice to have reasons to go looking for these series that otherwise could have very easily flown under the radar. And yeah, I think with the Formula E women's test, don't get me wrong, love that they're doing it. Once again, however, you've still got seats available on your grid for next year.
Mm.
Maybe, maybe you can see where I'm going.
Yeah,
Do I need to say it?
yeah. If these women are testing
Put
and
one of
getting
them in there.
competitive times,
Where's Evie Pulling going next year? Maybe not Nissan because they've filled their seats already, but there's other seats available. You could loan out a row. Marta Garcia. We know she'd like to be back in single seater racing as well as she's doing in the European Le Mans Series, but I'm just saying.
yeah, there are options there that I feel should be being optioned and probably aren't being optioned. But anyway, that's a discussion for another day. Meanwhile, when it comes to seats, the important ones have finally been announced. Mercedes have announced that they will continue with Russell and Antonelli for 2026. There is no definition on the length of either driver's contracts as it
Probably a
stands.
1 year contract, isn't it?
Yeah, so there could be scope to change that post-regulation shift, which is great for the drivers, especially if Mercedes do come out with a stinker. I feel this might be something that they might have been asking for. Obviously, at the last regulation change, it's taken Mercedes a while to get on the top of the ground effects cars. So
You could argue they still haven't. It's
yeah, they're still
very hot or cold.
yeah, it does blow hot or cold. It's a lot more steady at the moment, but even then, you can understand why Russell was a bit reticent to make that sort of long-term contract agreement when he jumped out of a Williams and jumped into something that was nearly just as bad the next season. So, yeah, I think he's been potentially very clever. While everyone will be sort of bemoaning that there isn't the long contract that potentially the drivers usually go for,
Might be the one time it's beneficial for someone.
yeah, it might be the one time this really works out, especially if you're Mercedes and Red Bull come out with an absolute duffer, and all of a sudden you've got Max Verstappen looking elsewhere again. Toto Wolff could finally have his dreams come true when he's got both of his drivers on a 1 year contract. It's a lot easier to then pick and choose which one goes away to make room for Max Verstappen, maybe. So, yeah, I think there's
My left field comparison analogy for that is always carrying around a plastic fork with you just in case you need one to eat something randomly that you weren't expecting and it finally comes through and you go, I knew this would come in handy one day. It's
yeah,
Total War's contract.
it's the better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it
Hmm.
sort of mentality. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out for Mercedes. Elsewhere, moving a bit more towards the American Grand Prix, we've got a few fun facts potentially. Haas have got a special livery for this weekend. It looks all right. VCarb have one too. It's Shabuzi themed. Shabuzi is an American singer and rapper, I'm informed. The
Well,
car
let's face it, you didn't know beforehand, and I still don't know now.
Yeah, the livery is sort of tortoise shell. Like apparently this is part of Shabuzi's
Yeah,
brand.
I've seen it, and Yeah, I'm like you. I'm still trying to figure out the relevance to Texas.
Red Bull, I think, have got one. They've posted a picture of a Stars and Stripe bedecked Red Bull. Hardly inventive, but equally it doesn't look gash. Aston Martin might have one, but as is often the way, they will unveil it about an hour and a half after we stop recording. Genuinely, I checked on their sort of press bit at 9:30, so that'll be possibly about an hour, half hour after we finished recording. And that's about it. No one else is running special liveries, but it is a sprint weekend. Yay! Um,
Sprint weekend, for those of you listening in the UK, means that you can channel for it and save yourself the hassle of ruining your entire weekend. It's on Sunday at 8:30 for all the qualifying and sprint highlights. So don't bother Saturday, turn off your phone, go outside, have a nice time, enjoy the autumn. Then Sunday morning, wake up, catch up for an hour or so, bish bash bosh, come back Sunday night, bish bash bosh again, done. Don't have to bother with Sky Sports, save yourself a couple of quid. Lovely stuff. That's how you get around a sprint weekend.
yeah, or you could just simply just watch it as a normal person might do. But anyway, yeah, it's a
Or
sprint
you want to
weekend.
watch a sprint.
But the important part with this weekend is not necessarily the fact that it's a sprint, it's the fact that it's going to be a warm one. 33 degrees Celsius or so, pretty consistently across the weekend. And bear in mind, we have very dark tarmac conditions in COTA. And this is going to be a problem for teams who haven't got a decent cooling package. Ferrari, I'm looking at you. And well, let's just also bring up the Pirelli list. Pirelli COTA 2025. I should have it somewhere. We've got a jump in compounds as well. We've got the C1 hard compound tire, the C3, and the C4, which is going to be interesting. I can't remember what we ran last year, but this is obviously going to be shaking things up a bit there. We had the C2 as the hard last year, and then the C3, C4 as the medium and soft. So we've got one step harder for the hard, which doesn't seem like a great idea. It's going to make it a much slower tire, though, which might force more drivers onto running the mediums a bit longer, twisting strategies, and especially if it is going to be hard. If it's going to be hot, that hard tire is going to warm up very well, but also stands a high chance of degradation. I do have the details on the track. Yeah, asphalt grip medium, abrasion low, but it does evolve quite nicely. And obviously, there are a lot of a lot of interesting tire stresses around this circuit as well. Big, heavy braking zones. So
Unique corners as well in terms of the corner types. It's because it's essentially a track dedicated to several other tracks, and they've just glued bits of it together in what then surprisingly worked out as quite a good track, but then
yeah,
does, like you say, confuse everyone a little bit in terms of you can't just say it's X amount of corners this way and X amount the other way. It's not as straightforward, unfortunately.
yeah, you've got a lot of high energy sectors on the track. You've got the Maggots Bearcats replica, which puts a lot of lateral load into it. You've got the big braking zone off that back straight and the one into turn one, which all put a lot of energy into the car, which all pretty much becomes heat as well. So a lot of thermal issues for the teams to stay on top of. Let's put it that way. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. I think 56 laps, and I think I've got somewhere in my notes the strategy last year was largely a hard medium sort of run with most of the laps and stints done across those. I don't think anyone actually did a long enough stint on the softs. I think they maybe stopped to pit for them fairly early on.
There's
So,
always a little bit of something that happens at COTA as well, just to throw things up. So even if it doesn't happen throughout the field, there's always going to be a few cars that do try something a bit different because of whatever they get caught up in. So that will be fun to keep an eye on as well. My question for you is though, we've been here since 2012. Who's won the most? Start easy.
what driver or team?
Which driver?
Lewis Hamilton.
How many times has he won?
5 times.
5 times. You have more confidence in yourself. One day you'll be right, and that day was today. So
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
yeah.
Obviously, Kimi won here back in 2018, but it ended a winless streak. How many Grand Prix did he go winless for the infamous quote of effing finally?
Um, was it about 50 Grand Prix? Somewhere in the region of 50 to 70 is where I'm putting a ballpark.
And you're back to usual of being dead wrong. 113 Grand Prix winless streak for Kimi Räikkönen.
Oh, so I mean, he hadn't won
Hence the
since the
satisfaction
Lotus
in
days.
effing
Yeah.
finally. Yeah, it'd been quite a while.
Oh,
And then final question, who scored their first championship points here in 2013?
in 2013.
Mm.
Who joined the field in 2013? It's a bit late for Grosjean.
Doesn't necessarily mean that they joined in 2013.
They're just taking a
Or
long
I
time
could
to
just
it.
be confusing you.
Jolyon Palmer?
No. Valtteri Bottas.
Really? Oh,
In his Williams Renault days.
oh, well.
So, yeah. America,
Yeah, I was
which
close. I
he's
was
so
close
famously
with Jolyon
associated
Palmer.
for now.
I was close with Jolyon Palmer because he had a rent. He drove for Renault, so I at least got the sort of engine supply a bit there in my mind.
And if Max Verstappen's mum was his dad, it'd be a whole different story. So,
Yeah,
not
there's
close,
also
but not close.
yeah, but yeah, of course, Bottas going well with America at the moment. Obviously now racing with Cadillac for next season. It'll be interesting to see what they do when they get around to their American Grand Prix. So hopefully they do a bit more sort of pomp and ceremony for it than Haas do. Haas really underplay
I feel
it.
like I'll allow them to get away with more of it because they just seem more America.
Yeah, sort of America, world police sort of style of things. We'll see
Hmm.
how they go. Anyway, with that sort of garbled preview out the way, we'll dive into some predictions, and we are in agreement when it comes to pole position this time.
Well, I'm back now taking things semi-seriously, so I think Oscar Piastri is going to come back out with a vengeance to get pole position, and you probably think something similar.
Yeah, I think that he's going to be fired up coming into this weekend and is going to be on a mission to start reclaiming some points that he may or may not have sort of thrown away, lost the opportunity to get a race previous. So yeah, it's going to be a renewed Oscar Piastri.
You're keeping that going with the podium as well.
That indeed I am. I think that we're going to see a punchy Piastri. I think making hay while the sun shines, and it's going to be sunshiny indeed. Yeah, Piastri on the top step of the rostrum, Verstappen second, Russell third. I think Verstappen is the Red Bull is a bit more underneath him at the moment. I think he's going to really be capitalizing on that as it stands, and sort of. I don't think making a bid for the championship is potentially the right phrasing for him, but certainly making a nuisance in the championship when it comes to sort of separating drivers and outscoring some and making things a bit harder for people than it really ought to be. Russell, again, cars on form. They seem to have got it down pat, and he's in a good place, potentially on a bit of a high off the back of having his contract renewed.
And winning last time out in Singapore as well to boot. So,
That too.
yeah, I think Verstappen's somehow going to hip Piastri to the win and surely just be a nuisance as he can be. But it'll be a tight knit thing. I think it's going to be a little bit like several of the Grand Prix we've seen this year. Think Budapest, for example, of nip and tuck for the entire way, and you're just hoping that one of the drivers makes a mistake, but it's not going to happen. And so Verstappen, Piastri, one and two, and then Norris bringing up the rear, and it's just going to tighten it all up a bit. So like point will swing a little bit, but maybe not make as much of a dent as not as much of a dent for Piastri and Norris, but definitely will help Verstappen just to keep them sweating somewhat heading into Mexico.
Yeah, Verstappen closes in on the leading pack, but Oscar sort of opens a bit more of a lead to Norris in that sense. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be nip and tuck, and I think yeah, I'm curious to see what happens. Fastest lap, I've gone for a bit of Piastri domination. I think he's going to get the Grand
Hmm.
Slam here with a fastest lap.
McLaren is your theme here
It,
for that entire prediction.
look, would it not be a sensible team to put money on at this point in the season? They've already wrapped up constructors. We know the car's good. We know that the drivers are motivated.
I
Um,
mean, I'm not to get ahead of ourselves, but all of your predictions so far could get undone by your wild prediction. So
yeah,
up
it
to you
depends
whether
how
or not you want to
wild.
bank on them and how
Yeah,
much so you want to do that.
depends how wild that one
I'm
gets.
yeah, I've gone for George Russell for the fastest lap for reasons that you put him into third place. I just think he's probably not going to be in and amongst it. He's going to be what Charles Leclerc was last year. He seems to be doing a worthy sequel to that and just be in his own world and just can bank out some laps at the end and go, you know what? I've got a massive gap with the cars behind me. Hit me for some softs. Why not? Let's just go for fastest lap. I know it doesn't mean anything anymore, unfortunately, but I want to give two more points. So I'm going to go and do that.
It's going to be an interesting one. And when it comes to those wild predictions, though, you've got an incredibly spicy one when it comes to certainly the lower end of the point scoring positions.
Yeah, I thought I'd just be really specific for once. And if I get it, I'll be happy. And now, knowing my luck, I'll probably get 2 out of the 3 here. I'm saying that Alonso, Hulkenberg, and Sainz finish inside the top 10. So I need them all in there to get the point here. Doesn't matter what order, because I think we'll just be happy that all 3 actually get in there and stay in there. But that's where I'm going for. You're going for a more warfare-based wild prediction.
Yeah, obviously in Singapore, we heard Oscar Piastri lamenting the fact that if you have to crash into your teammate to avoid another car, that's pretty terrible driving. Um, I think we're going to potentially see a scenario that's similar to this, and maybe the sort of thing that results in the podium I'm anticipating. And I think the McLarens are going to make contact again, and I think it's going to be more significant than it was in Singapore, a little bit more than a slightly bent wing end plate.
More Canada than Singapore.
Yeah, I think if you notice there's a reason that Norris isn't on my podium, I'm thinking that potentially if we've got Piastri on pole, Norris is going to be looking to make a bit of a send on things, screw up a move into turn one, maybe sort of get some.
Carlos Sainz, George Russell a couple of years ago sort of maneuver.
Yeah, that sort of thing where the only person that seems to suffer from it is him, probably like the one back marker he wipes out as he spins around. So I think there's going to be an interesting outcome from this one. And obviously, McLaren being McLaren, papaya rules. If Norris has a bit of a fumble at the start, they will then obviously ask Oscar Piastri to have a fumble at the start as well when he comes back round for lap two.
It's only fair.
Yeah, it's got to be kept fair. So yeah, I think that's how I see this running, and it's going to be interesting.
Scouts on is taken very seriously at McLaren.
Yeah, scouts on and they sort of do the dib dib dib, and they've got the orange
Hmm.
wave.
Thinking
With
very
that,
much the one from Scary Movie.
yeah, that one. With that out of the way, well, that's all we've got time for on this episode of the Undercut Podcast. We've touched everything we needed to get through. We'll be back next week for a review of the American Grand Prix. In the meantime, though, Thiemo, where can you be found?
This week you can find me over on Instagram. I've got 2 interviews out with Veronica Cotto and Marialina Pavli, my bad. And I've also got a fun bonus episode of On the Curves IndyCar out where we're building our dream 2026 IndyCar grid. A lot of interesting names came up in that conversation, and we definitely took the dream part of it very literally. So that was good fun to do. And if you've got any of your own suggestions, do feel free to reach out and tell me what those are. I don't mind how left field.
Some interesting suggestions, I hope, come your way. Meanwhile, if you'd like more from me, you can obviously find me online as at Jesse on Cars. Loads of content heading out there, and of course, you can find me writing for Classic Car Weekly. Latest issue is out on the day we record this, and obviously on shop shelves. And of course, we have the Classic Car Weekly podcast. We're recording that tomorrow. That'll go out too. Otherwise, we'll be back with a review of the American Grand Prix in just under a week's time.